And one thing I look forward to every month, getting the latest copy of Warbirds. Boy, I'll tell you, many good ideas. And because Joe and I are already seriously considering a 90 size Spitfire, Warbird magazines. And it seems like every time I thought I've just seen it all and had all the inspiration I need, I see something and I think, wow. Now, for sure, Joe Adamusco and I have discussed many times the idea of doing a 90 size Spitfire with dihedral, among other things, but the Warbird magazine comes in the mail and my head spins off in another direction. It's pretty predictable. And I'm sure the thing I always think about is I wonder what other people, well, Danny I know is a big Warbird fan. Al Raby, of course. I know Rich Oliver's got a Focke-Wulf half built down there in Houston. Everybody I think that really gets serious about modeling, at some point in time you want to make a Warbird. And I've already made some, but doesn't mean I don't want to make more. And you always want to think 1 year ahead of time. Now it's funny that so many attractive Reno Mustangs, just among other things. But again, I just never get tired of looking at these magazines. And I'm just thinking about that the Enola Gay, how polished the aluminum was, that one shooting star from the video. Wow. Well, we just had a visit with George Venturini recently with he filled me in on his friend who actually flew that, the U-2. Now, just as funny as this may sound, one of the planes that looks like it probably would make a decent stunt ship, looks like it even has the right proportions. But it's funny, you got to have inspiration from something. There's just so many things you can get inspiration from. One of the things I always do is from these Warbird magazines. And if you go back to the years when I built the twins, God, I must have had 1,000 of them in a cellar here. I often dream about what it must be like to have, instead of being working on models, you're restoring a real aircraft. But I'm not sure they don't have any more fun than we do. I'm never sure about that. Another one of the ships that we saw in a museum. Boy, when I was a teenage kid and Billy Suarez came out with that P-38, wow, he had two of them, by the way. He had one similar to this and a red one. Brings back a lot of very pleasant memories. And of course with George Waters, I'll have to share this magazine with George Waters. Just check this out, air spray. This is one of those things, if I was building another A26, I'd be seriously considering this paint job. Very cool. And of course Walt Brownell, one of our good friends, he did one of these up. I'm not sure how many they had, but by looking at the numbers on the tails, I'm wondering if they had like a whole fleet of these. They got one number 32, one number 20. wonder how many these are all 826s too. Boy, and again, special thanks to Gerald Champ. Over the years, he sent me a lot of Warbird stuff. Charlie Reeves, when we were doing the Tiger Cat. What a great way of sharing some inspiration. Anyway, I'm sure George Waters will get a kick out of this. I definitely will forward this to him. We'll see what color what paint job. In fact, he's leaning toward making one of those black night fighters from Vietnam. Boy, think of that museum, all that World War I stuff too. Just what a great weekend we had in Washington. That was unbelievable. And that was pretty cool when Zambelli saw the exact plane that he had made a model of, the Beach. Even in the same paint colors. I'm talking about some scoops here. Cafaro sent me a picture that has some ideas, and one of them was for some side scoops with a half moon shape. And they have this section here before Warbirds, after World War II, and guys could just privately own one of these. In fact, here's the one that Al modeled already. He already made a model of this. Kind of a Miss Ashley paint job, red on the bottom, white on the top. Sometimes you can just steal one of these paint jobs and put it on an SV11 or something, or a Cardinal or whatever. Anyway, it's time to get back down, get busy. The shop is calling. There's a cool paint job. Looks like a kind of an Aries Juno kind of paint job there. Now today I wanted to rough out the tips if I could. I wanted to make a little mention of a few things that I've learned about wingtips. A Big Jim used to have a saying, the wing ends where the wing ends. And I think to a certain degree that's true, because in times like this, and this was the Killer Bee, the first concourse winner, it had no wingtips at all. It just had flat plates on the end of the wings, and of course that didn't keep it from winning the concourse or getting in the top 5. But it taught me something about wingtips. Jimmy Casale pretty much had the same feeling. Make the wingtips as small and square as possible. And the only thing I didn't like about that whole thing was the style part of it, because the wingtips really go along for the ride. In some of the older Cardinals we try to make big swoopy wingtips. Some of the ones we made were completely square wingtips. And I think it's fair to say I've made a plane with just about every wingtip shape you could possibly make, from no wingtips to 4-inch blocks with a big swoop in them. But when we started the Miss Ashley project, I kind of wanted to simulate the wingtips that were on the wing that's in Miss Ashley, the Lear wing. I always thought that style kind of looked good on that type of a plane. Frank McMillan's had some real nice swept back wingtips. And this is a funny thing, when we were in Texas, of course the Typhoon you have to do almost scale wingtips, but Frank brought up a good point. When we were in Texas, he said the wingtips, you know, they not only are contribute to the styling of the plane, but he thought it contributed a lot to how the plane tracked in some gusty conditions. So, and I'm not sure about that. The jury's out on that one, but the only way I'll ever really know is somewhere down the road make a plane with removable wingtips and see if that's true. But for now, I think I'm going with Big Jim's program that the wingtips go along for the ride, except for one little fact, and this is the fact I wanted to bring up. Problem was on the Testarossa, toward the trailing edge, the Miss Ashley shape of wingtip got really thin, and I wanted to change that just a little bit on this model. Small cosmetic change. Now Dave and I have gone back and forth 100 times on wingtip shape. He likes them when they're glued on this way. I've had them this way, of course. But if you take the same wingtip and just glue it on backwards, pretty much looks like a Miss Ashley wingtip. So again, I think Jim was basically right. The wingtips go along for the ride. They're a cosmetic part of the plane, but in this case, there's a look we're after. Gerald Champ, John Cafaro, Les Demet, we're all after a certain look. And so before I make the change, I wanted to just, I always look at all the pictures in on my shop walls here just to see if anything inspires me. Now in this case, we weren't bringing the flaps all the way out to the tip. That's changed, of course. We even had a whole series of planes that had, I don't know what wingtip shape you would call this, traditional. Many of the classic planes use that shape. But again, I think the bottom line here is that Jim was right. The tips go along for the ride. So we can basically use this as a style exercise. And I'm not sure, but there's only so many tip shapes you can make, and then it gets crazy. Anyway, let's get the drawing out from last year's plane and see if I'm going to be able to do this. Now the change I really wanted to make is I wanted to basically use a very similar or the same shape, but I didn't want this to get so thin out here. This bothered me that it got so thin, and so what I thought I'd do is I'd just take, well, 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch off the total block size, and that would leave this a little bit thicker. Well, once I rough one of these blocks out, we'll see if that's gonna, well, we can always go back to the old shape. So this is the original, the shape we used for the Testarossa, and the part that was a problem was when I got down to this area, it really just got too thin, and I didn't like the way it linked up with the flaps at the tip. So I thought if I cut off, I'm going to try 1/4 of an inch first, so that this whole block is thinner. Instead of tapering out, it'll tend to taper more to a point. And we'll see how that, well, again, I don't think this is a major thing, but it's these little adjustments that I think add up to a constantly evolving design. Now what I did is I just took and made another pattern. This is going to be a rough pattern. Taking 1/4, it looks like 1/4 of an inch might be enough when I just eyeball this. But it's pretty similar in every respect, except for the fact, if you put them side by side, you can see one is a lot thinner. So the next step is to find appropriate blocks for this project, and here's the big problem. We don't have a lot of blocks, but we do have a lot of scrap. So cutting it out of scrap, end cuts and stuff, then we'll have to weigh up each block to see what they weigh. Now we managed to cut up, you can see how the weight varies in this. So we want to take the 2 lightest ones for the inner tip. That'll be easy. We can put that aside for now. These are the 2 heaviest ones. And it would be nice if we had the heaviest one on top, because this is the surface that you're going to see while the plane is sitting at rest. Now there's one other problem has crept into this, and the airfoil at the tip is about 2 1/8. It's a slightly bigger than 2 inches, and these are 1-inch blocks. Now if I had 1 1/4 blocks, problem solved. But they're not, and so I'm going to have to make a spine for this, and I usually don't have a spine. Usually the airfoil fits right on there, and for whatever the reason is, and I don't know if it's because, I know Dave has made little tiny changes to the mold, or just the fact that we have other variables here, the sheeting is thicker or whatever, I'm not sure. But we need to make a little spine in here to bring us up to the thickness. Now I traced out 4 of these. I think I'm only going to need 2. And because these are smaller than last year's tips by a small amount, I'm hoping it's going to stay thicker out here and not give me that that real thin edge, and I think I just carved it a little too thin last year. We'll see with this very tiny change to the shape. Now what I'm going to have to do is just do a little dry mock-up of the wingtip to see if this is going to give me enough thickness. If it doesn't, then the problem is going to, well, we're going to have to either make thicker pieces or use 2 pieces. I would like to maintain one of these parts as having a center line. That's one of my goals. So again, we're going to have to, this is one of those tricky little things. But now we have, let's get this out of here. We have a single spine and 2 pieces. And let's just figure how this is going to be. I can always sand the extra off. What I need to do is see if that complete airfoil fits on there now. I didn't want to have it that it just almost didn't stick up. So now the deal is, and of course when they cut balsa wood, this isn't cut with a micrometer or anything. Sometimes it's a 64th less, a 64th more. But this will give us, well, will give us a test once these are glued together. What I really should do here, I guess I'm not doing this the way I wanted to anyway. I wanted to measure the high point of the wing real carefully. We certainly could do this 2 different ways. It would appear we have it, but as long as it's just as easy, we can check it. Boy, we just have it. Just by the slightest amount. That's good. But I'm going to have to really pay attention that at the high spot I'm not up or down even by a little bit. And I remember doing Miss Ashley, doing the Testarossa, this joint got to be a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to be real careful when I glue this together. Next step is to tack this together. Now I want to tack glue the blocks. I want the front to be perfectly even. I left the spine a little bit oversized, but I want this to be on a flat surface because I'm trying to work off of this surface. Let's get the front just nice. With that, now I can squeeze them together and just tack them in place. Now it could be that what we have here is just blocks that are a little bit under 1 inch. I don't know because, again, none of this stuff is precision cut. That's for sure. And when we're pulling them out of the scrap bin, I don't even know where we got these from. We're trying to save. I have a few big ones left for top blocks and stuff, but boy, there sure is a shortage of good balsa wood in the world. I think Rich Oliver's the only one in the world still has good balsa wood. We're going to have to go steal some over in Texas. Bring an empty suitcase in when he's not looking, just take it. Now I just want to have this just tacked together for now. And because I have this flat glass table, I hope I get this. I want this surface and the surface of the wing to be relatively nice and straight for all the carving operations. is where I like to use Les's hardwood block that's trued up at 90. Has a different grade of paper on each side. We're going to be using this on Jack Bone's Stuka to get the wing angles. Now, one trick, if you know you're not dealing with an even surface, if it's really off, take and put a Sharpie marker line around it, and then as soon as you sand the whole marker off, you know you got it. In this case, these are pretty well trimmed because they're fit off of that rib, which we know is 90 degrees from the mold. But if you're doing a D-tube wing, it can get to be a little more work. Nice noise, huh? I want a perfect, it's good of a joint here. This was one of the joints that on the Testarossa I spent a lot of time trying to make this joint disappear. Of course, in the end it does. But boy, you could really spend your many hours getting it right. Oh, I love that sound. Same thing with this. Now I know I can't true the trailing edge up until I actually have it installed, so I always leave the back just a little oversized, leave the front a 64th oversized, because in the end you want to blend that in, and I don't want to recontour the wing. I want the block to be oversized, and then I'll contour it into the wing, not the reverse. I don't want the wing to contour into an undersized block. Again, that was one of the things I remember, and on this shape tip we've done a lot of these, and even more so on the cardinal tip where it's basically reversed, and you've got to bit that blend to come right in the front of the wing. Now I want to position this in place. I'm trying to do a dry, what I was going to do is do a dry fit on this and make sure I have exactly the same amount up and down. And I can do that with a piece of tape and a couple of pins before I actually put any glue on it, because I just want tacks of glue. Now I can just hold this in place with a piece of blue tape, and now what I need to do is go around, carefully line up my center lines here. And because this is not a foam wing, now if I were doing a foam wing, which would be similar, the issue is always you don't want to melt the foam, so you'd have to use epoxy or aliphatic. With this type of wing you can just put a drop of thin CA on there. And how nice it is that we have the joint is the center line, and I can just carefully adjust this. Again, we want to be real careful to leave everything oversized here. Oversized. I've got, wow, that worked out great. Boy, if somebody just flew in from Mars, they might think I know what I'm doing. Not really. Now, the most important thing is that this stays. I just put a tack in there. I'm waiting for that to go off. And I'm tacked in on the front. That'll mean that I'm right on center, and I have an equal little bit of a lip here, just a little bit. Again, this is the critical area right here. Now I can take and just put a few tacks along the way. Again, if this is a foam wing, the problem is with a foam wing, you can't do this with CA. You got to do it with epoxy and then wait for it to dry, and it gets sloppy. And with a composite wing, you can just glue it right on, tack it right on. Now I want to take that tape that I used and just use it as a little protection that I'm not going to get this too thin. This will just protect me and get me close. I don't want to, if possible, I don't want to sand through the glass when I do that joint. And I can leave a little bit of extra on a trailing edge. I don't have to get that perfectly straight right now. I can leave a little bit of extra on the front. I don't have to get that perfectly straight right now. But what that does, while during the carving operation and the sanding, I'm just going to rough this in, but I'm not going to get it, hopefully that I don't scuff up the tape or sand through the tape. And this, of course, is a good way on any wing to do this, to get a nice blend there, because then in the final sanding you can just get that last little bit to come out. Now, one of the things that I've seen guys try to resharpen blades and use blades over and use blades forever. Right now, is a perfect time to get a brand new 26 blade. Now, the reason is, and I've done it myself, I have this little diamond sharpener and I've sharpened them, and I just make myself crazy. But when you're doing a block and it's got to be right, nothing seems better than a brand new blade. Now, I always think some of the tips of carving are to try to avoid going into the grain as much as possible. In this case, I put down an old towel. As soon as I fill it up with chips, I can take it outside and just swoosh it into the breeze. Let it go with the leaves. There's enough leaves out there, so it shouldn't even matter. Now, I want to carve almost to this tape, but not into the tape. And the idea is to take little ice slivers off, not to get a big gouge going in there. Try to do as much of it as possible with the grain. As I go around the corner here, it's going to get more and more difficult to do that. And again, in this area here, I want to, because this block is a little thinner, I want to leave it a little thicker. A little bit different shape aerodynamically. I'm sure it doesn't mean much, but cosmetically, it'll be very similar. And we kind of like that shape. If you look at the real Miss Ashley, the shape that, well, it's pretty much on flight streaks and everything, pylon racers, but the one I really like is the real Miss Ashley drawings with the Lear wing. That wingtip shape is just, it really adds something to the airplane. And again, I like to just take my time. The thing to avoid is big giant chunks. Once you have big giant chunks, and we're going to be mailing out John Cafaro the belly pan to a Miss Ashley, and I'm not sure if he's making a Miss Ashley or if he's going to modify it into something else. But John, it'll be on its way out to you very soon. And those molds have been used. Well, Bill Rutherford used them. I think Rich Oliver. I think Rich Oliver used them too. Anyway, if you see what I'm doing, I'm just going little by little by little by little, one ice sliver at a time. Nothing really big. Better to take 100 little thin ice slivers than one and go too far. Now, another thing that's handy to know, as we're starting to develop this shape, fresh blade, absolutely fresh blade. One of the things I've done in the past is right here, and I'm going to show this because, boy, I've got myself screwed up good. Right here, I'd be doing this, putting my thumb out here carving, and all of a sudden blood's dripping down my hand. So I always try to be careful. You never really cut with that last little thing. You wish they would just leave it dull. Well, you could put tape over that, I guess. But another little tip that I think is worthwhile. Here, the grain is going pretty much straight here. If you try to cut straight to that grain, the blade always wants to dig. It wants to dig a lot more than it does if you hold the blade on a 45-degree angle. You can take a lot nicer, I call them ice shavings, and a lot nicer slivers, and you can do the work a lot faster. A lot of people like to use a plane at some point in time, and you can certainly do that. But we want to develop this shape. And as we get one side done, then the trick is, once that one side is developed, then we want to flip it and try to do the other side. The smaller, the thinner those ice shavings are, it just seems easier to develop a shape that way. Once you start taking big chunks out, that seems like when it gets a little more difficult. And once you get in a rhythm, it goes pretty quickly. Anyway, every time I look at this now, I can start to see that curve coming in. See, this is where having a spine will be a little bit handy, because I can carve right up to the spine. And normally I have a joint to work off. This time I have a spine, and that's one of the, well, we're going to see how it works. Well, you know I have to bring this down. You know, early the killer bee plane. Boy, and I remember many times thinking, boy, how much easier it is just to, we used to just glue 16 plywood on the wingtips. Put 2 holes in for the lead out guide, you'd be done with the thing in 2 minutes. And then win a concourse too, so. After somebody else has done what I'm doing right now, carving up a storm. Anyway, it's all personal choice, it's all subjective anyway, but. And if you're doing a semi-scale plane, of course, you've got to take that into account too. You can't be improvised too much. Okay, now we're coming up. The back is kind of under control. Now we got to start looking at bringing this front around. I noticed on Joe's Spitfire he has a little bit of a unique tip weight box where he bolts the tip weight in from the side. I didn't get a chance to talk to him about that, but we have the method we've used for probably 25 years has never failed in service, and when things have that reliability record, I gotta have a very compelling reason to change them. Don't just change them because I want to see the bolt going in a different direction. Anyway, we've got this really starting to come in now. Now we have to really do it one little tiny ice shaving at a time as we get this whole first half done. Now we have the front pretty well curved in. We're within maybe a 32nd. But we got to start working the back. And as I bring this down, I want to bring it right down to that, whatever we're going to call it, the spine. And now the way that seems to have worked the best for me in the past. Just start at the high point of the wing and start removing material. And this is where I got this too thin last year. This is where I ran into, I was just getting too creative there. I'm being more than the usual amount of careful, not to over thin this. I always like to feel the contour with my hands before I move. Start getting a little carried away here. We're getting down into near the spine. And the trick is just not to let the knife catch and take some big chunks off. Okay, now the back is still way too thick. Now this area I'm going to have to really be careful. Ice shave that down. So I want this contour to just flow. From the front to flow right around. Now as I get down to the last little bit here, and boy, we're within a 64th around the edge of the tape, I want to just really be careful about not taking too much material off. Just really little ice shavings here and there. This is where it's dangerous when you're going into the grain. I want to take out the slightest little piece. Now I got 2 motives here. I don't want to do any, I want to do the minimum amount of sanding with sandpaper because it makes dust. And I can deal with carving, but it's a problem, and Karen's home today, so I don't want to create a lot of dust in the house, even though I have that jet sanding. It still gets into the heating vents when the heat kicks on. I just try to run my hand. Oh, I got a couple spots right here. Anyway, we're closing in on having one half of this side done. And then the difficult part is to get a mirror image on the other side. Right here is where it's just a little bit thick. Trying to just mimic the airflow around here to get the shape as I'm trying to develop the shape. You never go wrong if you're just taking little ice shavings off. The only way you really get in trouble is when you just take one of those big gouges out. And we've got a pretty good, got that pretty much, this is oversized. Pretty much right at the point where the last little bit I can do with a little bit of rough sandpaper. But for now, I think what I'll do, and I'm just looking at this, I think I'll just do the bottom now. I'll get rid of some of these chips, take them and just drop them out in the garbage. And then the trick is going to be to try to copy this side onto this side. A lot of people, when they're carving, they just can't figure where to take material off that you know you're not going to use. And then at the end, be real gentle, just ice shavings. Now the next step on this, I'm going to try to very carefully, I don't want to get any closer than that. I shook out all the chips just to clean up the table, and here's my opportunity now to do the same thing on the bottom. Just pretty much mimic what went on this side, and when we're all done with that, the final shaping I'm going to do with sandpaper. Get a sanding block with some medium or rough grit. But now the trick is in trying to mimic it and trying to copy that shape. Now what I do in the past sometimes is make little patterns for maybe every 2 inches. Now I can do it pretty much by just using my hand for a guide. Now we got as much of this roughed out as I think is practical. Ready to go over to the sanding bench, get a sanding block made up, and try to true this in as much as possible right up to that line. And of course dump this. Ugh. Now just imagine how much sanding, how much dust that would make if you did that all with sandpaper, and be all over the house, all over the VCRs, everything. Now because we've done most of the work with carving, this part usually goes, well, relatively quickly anyway. So again, I'm trying to follow the contour that the air would follow as it went over. And it doesn't take long with the sandpaper, and you can pick up pretty much all of the shapes. But I'm leaving it just a little bit oversized. You can just feel a little lip on there. Because once I make the tip weight box up, I want to come in and take that last little kerf off of there, that last little bit, and have that air, that just like the air is flowing over the wing, without feeling any joints. Now you can see how we left this a little bit long on the back, but everything else is pretty well roughed in. Now, next time we get to work on this, I guess we have two choices here. We could do this, do the tip weight box, that part of it. I'd like to do the two tips as close as possible. Still haven't figured out exactly how I want to do this, or if I'm happy with these thinner tips. Again, I'll have to look at it. Our block is perfect. In fact, we put it back the opposite way to get it back to neutral again. But anyway, good news is, today is Thanksgiving. Karen's up there cooking away. We're going to the kids for Thanksgiving. And we hope you enjoy sharing a minute or two of it with us. Unfortunately, it's a really crappy day. We were hoping it would be a nicer day. A good day to carve wingtips, and it's a good day to eat turkeys. I snuck up here while Karen wasn't here just to see what she's making to bring to the kids. Let's see what's in here. I'm getting hungry. Oop. There's some good stuff here. What do you think, Mr. Pumpkin? What do you think? Thanksgiving? And it is Thanksgiving, 2006. And we're going to go see Stacy and Rob and all the kids and, hey, all the birds. Look, even the birds are celebrating today. I'm not sure they're really celebrating here. I think they're just happy that I feed them. What do you think, Mr. Pumpkin? Go sand those wingtips. Nah, we're going to see the kids.
We go out to have fish, and I eat fish in the office.
So here we are, Thanksgiving Day at the McKeever household, where hors d'oeuvres are the order of the day.
No, because it's too
thick.
It's a little like that. Then you don't eat. Then you don't
Exactly.
eat. Yeah, that's.
I don't think there'll be many of these hot dogs left. These were really good.
Okay. You'll come over.
We got enough food in here?
You'll come over.
Got enough food in there? Bill, where's that bird?
I want to see that video you took of me, Maddie's first matzo ball soup.
Look at all.
Gosh.
Now here's the boy that was feeding. Tell everybody you were feeding. Bill, did he confess? He's feeding the turkeys apples. Big sign up in Vermont. Don't feed the turkey. There he is. That's what happens when you eat apples in the McKeever household.
You get that?
You bet. The McKeever household. Ah, the smell of turkeys. Looks great. Corn muffins. This is so embarrassing. Your feeder's empty.
Oh, that could be.
Oh my! Look, the birds are starving. Oh, how! It's Thanksgiving. You should go out there and fill it up. That's horrible.
Still have in the freezer at home. I have some.
I get the feeling we're in Vermont. It's cold outside, but it's warm here in the McKeever household. Thanksgiving 2006. Share a few minutes of it with
But it's also
Wendy and Karen.
He's older. He was on He's still very young. He was on Bill Maher.
You did such a great job. When you get old, you'll want to look back at this day.
Who's gonna?
Now I know where all my balsa wood's going. Why I never have any good balsa wood blocks. The man is stealing all my balsa wood. The fire looks great, especially on a cold day like today. What do you think, Murphy? Murphy, are you a good cat?
You have like a major close-up of it.
Are you a good cat?
Everyone have a seat.
Murphy, you look bored. Time to eat the turkey.
Wendy and Pappy can sit there.
Here. Table first.
Another outstanding job, Mr. McKeever.
All I did was a turkey.
I have to admit.
A lot of controversy.
I have to admit.
All I did was turkey. Well, okay.
Gross.
I think we should count our blessings. Oh, look at Murphy. Murphy!
Excellent.
Look at him. Look at him.
It's a tough life,
He's
Murph.
got a happy. He's happy on my.
He's ready for the turkey. Where's the turkey?
I know. Just
Quit
keep on-
yapping and get the turkey out.
Keep on rubbing me, and I'll stay right on
Please
this.
touch. You get the head, the tail, hold down.
Hold that thing. No, she just made an extra setting.
Oh.
I did? Yeah, you made
I'll sit here.
8 or 7.
You sit there. You're right.
And we had a great Thanksgiving. And this morning what I wanted to do, we're entering the time of the year when it just gets very hectic. First off, what happens is our workload goes through the roof. We always have snow to shovel and tenants to throw pipe wrenches at and things. But the one thing I've learned is that I can still squeeze in little building sessions. The trick is, like today, I get up in the morning real early. Before breakfast, I'll work for an hour. And in between the hectic things that go on in the shop, I'll probably get another hour in. But it's going to be little chunks, little chunks. And then at the end of the day, a lot of times Karen will have a movie she wants to watch, something that I'm not interested in, and I'll work again. But the point is, if I don't do that, what happens between now and about February is I don't get anything built. So today the first thing I want to do is I want to get a brand new razor, remove the tip. I've left it oversized on back here because I want to block sand that right in, and maybe even put another hinge pocket out in the tip. Gonna have to see. I like having two hinge pockets, two hinges out at the tip. Sometimes that it can keep the end from getting flexible. And we'll see if we're going to do that or not. Again, I'm looking at this because I really only have a short amount of time, but I thought possibly I could get the tip weight box started today. And this is one of the things that a lot of people always calling me, oh, I have no time to build, no time to build. Well, what time do you sleep till? Oh, noon. What time do you go to bed? 1 o'clock. Yeah. You know, and they squander a lot of opportunities now. Rich Jacobone's out buying supplies today so we can start on his wing tomorrow. Or so, I'm not sure if he's going to want to come over Monday or Tuesday, but we want to get his wing. There's an awful lot of stuff to do on his wing. We need parts, we need to make a bell crank, push rods, whatever. But in the meantime, I'll have 2 or 3 little building sessions today, and this morning I'll start by pulling this wingtip off. And that's a good way to do it, because sometimes the other choice is maybe you don't get anything built, and you see all these people that they show up at the Nats with a 10-year-old plane. Well, yeah, but you know, there's always those little chunks of time, and we're going to try to use some of them today. I'm always careful around a fiberglass surface to pull this tape nice and slow. If it looks like it's going to have any tendency to pick up any of the glass, because it's still vulnerable here right until we get some dope and tissue on it. Still easy to put a dent in it even. But that gave us just enough that we have a little, if you were running your finger over this, there'd be a little step there. And in the final part, then we can just blend that right in. Now what always seems to be the best is a single edge razor, a brand new one. And no matter how many times I do this, there's only 2 possibilities. You put too much glue on it and it pulls up some of the wood, or you're in the middle of carving it and it breaks off. But there's never the right amount, and this one looks like one of the ones that's got a bit too much glue on it. Still not a problem, because we're going to true up both of those surfaces before we make the final joint, but I wanted to keep this joint as neat as possible. And usually in the back here is where it's going to be a problem. There we go. And when I've tried doing it with just 1 drop of glue, what happens in the middle of carving it, boink, it's off, jumps onto the floor. There we go. Now it's always going to take off a few little pieces of wood with it, no matter how careful I am anyway. I mean, if we got a couple here. So we'll get the sanding block and true both of these up as the next step. And there's always some chunks of wood that just come off. Now before I go to the next step, getting this trued up and of course getting the wing itself trued up. And we've already got some little spots on there that have to come off. Some of these can come off with a knife. Some of these can come off with a knife blade, I guess. There we go. Just to make it easier, because we want to, remember we got this rib in with the jig fixture from, it'll come right off. This is set with a jig fixture, so we know it's pretty accurate. And this seam is one of those things that in the final finish, I want this seam to be as hopefully invisible or as invisible as possible. Now it's the same thing with this part. I want to split it apart, but I have that spine in there. Now normally I would use the two blocks, if I had thicker blocks. The joint would be my center line. In this case it's the lower line because I want the joint to wrap around. I don't want to see, I'm more than likely going to see that joint in the final, until I get it sanded and whatever, filled in. I'd like to bury that joint as much as possible, but I'd also like to have it just on the bottom of the wing instead of just on the top. And this, luckily, this is one of the few parts on the plane that we don't really care. Look at that, that came right apart. We don't care what this weighs. If this weighs a little more, here it's coming apart now, and it's got some chunks of wood as we always expect. We'll true all these surfaces up. And we're going to make this tip weight box the way we always make it. But we're going to be working off the lower end of the spine so that the top half, in other words, everything's going to go in this side. The top half is just going to be our cover, and it wraps around just a little bit. This is a little modification on how we've done these in the past. Because we're going to be using one surface of this for the bottom of the tip weight box, and each one we do just a little bit different. The original Miss Ashley one was done with this pretty similar tip shape. When we use the tips the reverse, like cardinal tips with a slanting back, we try to relocate the box, but in this case we want to get the box right about on the high point of the wing if possible. And I'm laying out the top block, the tip weight box. Top block. I need more coffee in the morning. Anyway, I got a call from Rich, and he is stoked to be working on that Stuka. He is just straining at the bit. Now we're going to go over to the jigsaw. A lot of what goes into making these tip weight boxes, I think nice and efficient and easy to make, is everything has a 90-degree angle. So when we go to the jigsaw, this cut will be 90 degrees. We can just cut in here and then fill it in with a spacer later. But this establishes our cut. You never want to get this edge too close to the edge. When it gets too close to the edge, it's hard to maintain a nice sharp line there. And of course, this is a good time for one of those famous new blades. Now, and since we want both pieces, I want to be as neat as possible about going around this edge, because I'm trying to maintain everything at 90 degrees so that hatch will just drop right in when I'm done. Again, half of the trick to doing good jigsaw work is the blade's got to be a razor blade. Once a blade gets a little dull, it starts wanting to wander all over the place. Now you may think, uh-oh, you get into a corner. How do you do the corner? Well, what I do is I just carefully rotate that part around. Again, I don't want to get this edge too close. That's a critical part of having a nice tip weight box. When I'm done and I block sand in all these edges, I should have a really nice fit. It should just drop right in. This is one of the things I really don't know who gets the credit for this, but years ago, Lou Dutke used to make tip weight boxes this way. Glenn Metter, Jimmy Casal, maybe even in on that list. And I think we all just assumed the other guy invented it, but this is a good way to do it. Again, I don't want to make that any bigger than it has to be. The whole idea of this is to keep nice, neat edges. And here I have a piece that at 90 degrees drops right back in there, as opposed to some other ways that when you're done, that part you've got to sand edges and angles all over the place. Now again, I don't want to sand off a lot of material. I just want to true these edges up ever so slightly, because I know I've got pretty close to 90-degree edges here. This will be the tip weight, the little cover for the box. And when we're done, it should be a really nice fit. And I always believe in screwing the tip weight in, bolting it in, never leave it just rolled up in paper towels or something, because many times I've seen it shake its way out and it vibrates its way right through. In fact, we did one at Flushing where one of mine flew out and almost took Jose Modesto's head off. Or it can damage a plane, or even worse, hit somebody in the face, because that's going probably 60, 70 miles an hour. So now we have a real nice cover with a flat edge that's 90 degrees to our tip. Now what I do is just this little seam, because I don't want to put any stress in it. I've got the shape I want. I just fill that seam with thick CA. Let it kick off naturally so there's no stress on the part. And that's all we need to hold it in place for right now. Again, our whole objective is to maintain all these 90-degree angles and put a hard edge on each corner. And again, it's just like building a house. If you get all these edges and angles nice and straight, the rest of it is a piece of cake. It's when you have to deal with things being all crooked and twisted and that you wind up with something that's very difficult and time-consuming to make nice. And once those edges are all nice, this edge here will just disappear in the paint. And the whole objective is that when we're all done, and I bet everybody here has put a tip weight box in, tighten a bolt, when you go to take it out, it doesn't want to come out. We'd like to start with a relatively nice fit if possible. Now the critical thing is to hold this perfectly straight, perfectly flat, and trace out what our opening is. That is a true story I'll never forget. Jimmy Casale came to the field one day, true story, with a brand new plane, and a tip weight box was on the top of the wing. And he tried for a week to convince us that that's how he wanted it, so he could change the tip weight without having to flip the plane over. Not one person ever believed him. Now we want to make two little ledges, front and back. And these are the ledges that we're going to use. Inside here can be all carved out, and I'll just do that with a Dremel tool any way I can. Just make what amounts to be a big hollow area. And when this goes back together, once that hollow area where the weight is going to be, there'll be two little ledges that'll fit right in there, that'll hold the box right in place. I think it's a very efficient way to build something like this. Now the nice thing here is we don't have to try to make this an ultralight part. What I like to do is get as much of the weight concentrated up here, but I don't need to make this part super hollow or 1 gram or whatever. So when I take the material out, I don't want to make it paper thin at the floor, because we're going to have to put a piece of plywood in there with a bolt to hold the tip weight. See how quick that material comes away. You have to really be careful. Look at I'm trying to make a tip weight box, and she goes shopping and comes back with, no, am I going to be able to wear that hat?
No, this goes with my purple ski jacket.
You're supposed to be buying everything Ferrari red.
Oh, sorry about that.
Ferrari, they don't make pastel Ferraris.
Sorry. You want to see what I got?
Sorry, yeah, let's see what you got. Now, just what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Karen was out Christmas shopping, and now it's, well, she's got other plans. But I've used an hour or so of time to get to this point. So I'm a little bit further ahead now. And now the next time I work on this, I'll have this all hollowed out and ready to go. And it's just it's a way that I've managed to build a lot of planes. Probably as somebody in the world built more than I did. Maybe there's more than one person, I don't know. Well, maybe there isn't anybody at all, but I know we bring a new one to the Nats pretty much every year. Okay, we got this part just roughed out. This is probably a little thicker than I would want to have, but I want to leave material because, again, I'm trying to keep this trailing edge thicker. It got a little bit too thin on Miss Ashley, so this curve I haven't developed yet. I'm just leaving a little extra material. And once I develop it in the outer tip, then I'll be able to replicate it. I'll make a little gauge and do it in the inner tip. Okay, the next step on this is going to be, we're going to make up a floor for the hold down bolt. Just make it up out of plywood. Alright, I've laid out all the pieces in a sheet of 1/8 inch light ply. These are the pieces, the rough pieces that I'm going to need to do all the assembly. Get the hatch cover to attach and the bolt that's going to be holding our tip weight in. I can cut these all out. We'll be ready to go to the next step. Okay, next step, I made the little part that's going to hold our tip weight. A little piece of plywood, a blind nut. I want to get flatten this off with the grindstone. I want this to be a much nicer, flatter fit. I don't want this to be, when I install it in here, I don't want it to be poking up through the top, or put a little stress riser in the wood that'll show up when I put this part in the sun. And I need the bolt long enough to put at least 2 ounces of tip weight on. You know, that allows me to get a better joint in here when I put this into the box. Okay, that gets glued in. I'm waiting for that glue to dry. It should be good and dry. Now the next thing is to lay out where our support for the tip weight box cover is going to go. Now what's real handy here, because we have an 1/8 inch spine, we can just cut this piece of the spine out. Like I said, we better re-glue that other part too. Now the idea is that when we take our floor is going to come out even with the top. And I've got to cut this little piece out over there and then drop this in. Now with that finally set in there. Now the important thing here is to make sure we're flat in all dimensions. So what I'll do is I'll just carefully run a straight edge over the top of that, and I just want to put one tack in each spot. The reason for that is when I drill a hole that's going to set the tip weight box in place, I need to get under here and get a blind nut in. Now sometimes it's very convenient. If it's real inconvenient, I can just pull this up and then re-glue it. So I give myself some options that way. But right now, one tack of glue will just hold that in place. Okay, the next step is I pin this together. I need to spot this bolt because it sticks up into the hatch. So I need to know where that's going to actually ride up for now. And of course we don't want it so long. Let me get this off of here. It puts a little spot in there, and I can just, for right now, remove some of that material. Okay, now with that wood removed, now I can drop this down conveniently. Now I want to keep this exact dimension around here. I don't want to have this sliding off in one corner when I do any of the other work. So what I want to do is I want to carefully mark on this just how far back we're going with this. And I know, and once I pull it out, I can pretty much line it up on there, but I know right here I need to take that amount of wood out, and I need to put the slot for my other cowl mount. My cowl, why do I call this a cowl? And that's going to be the mount that we're going to use. So this is cut now. I have the little trough made, and I'd like to get this as flat as possible. If I need to adjust that with a little piece of sandpaper. Because I want that to sit flat when that goes in. Okay, now that's glued in. Now I want to spot this bolt, and I've got a nice flat surface there to work off. So what I want to do is I want to carefully get this dimension. You can see how careful I am. And these two line up. So when I drill one, it's hopefully going to spot the other hole exactly where I want it. And this is probably the last thing I'm going to be able to do, because it's Christmas season, and you can imagine in my house where that's going. Now that spots my hole. Now what I want to do now, though, rather than put this in place here, I want to take this over to the drill press, because that's going to spot my 90-degree hole. I can't get the hole going off on an angle. So just having that spot and having a drill press with a 90-degree hole, and once that's done and I install this in here, it'll spot that part of the hole perfectly. And I only have to drill this 90 degrees to get that second one perfect. That's a nice little tip, by the way. This is absolutely one of the keys to making this perfect. Now this will be the hole for the bolt. And I've got that spotted. Now I'm just clearing this so I have room for the head of the bolt. And we'll put a little aluminum tube on there when we're done. Now we're not going to work on this anymore in this session. I'll probably come back to it either tonight or tomorrow. But I'll set this cover in place, take a sharpened piece of 1/8 inch wire, and I can spot that hole perfectly now. We got an awful lot done in a very, very short session. See, and now I'm this much further ahead, rather than just waiting for a whole clear Saturday or a day that there's not much going on in the shop. This time of year, that day is going to be a long ways away, but we're going to take advantage of every little session we can. Okay, my buddy Woody is at the feeder. Karen and I are going to go take a walk around town, look at some of the Christmas decorations. Maybe have some gyros, I'm not sure. What do you want to have, gyros?
Salad.
Salad?
Greek salad's fine.
Look at this, they're swinging. Woody's swinging on my feeder here. Looks like a nice day.
It's beautiful.
Not a leaf on a tree. Can't even tell if the wind is blowing. But Brian did call me before and say, come on down the field, it's a beautiful day. But we're going to do our Christmas decorating today. And we do our walking every day in a beautiful downtown Rutherford. And all the neighbors are taking it down. Time to take down the pumpkins and put up the Santa Clauses. Oh, we love downtown Rutherford, all these old houses. And Karen and I have committed to walking an hour a day. And so far, been about 2 months, we haven't missed a day yet. Oh, it's the time of year we just hate to say goodbye to our pumpkins. Old houses, pumpkins. Something about these old houses, I don't know what it is. Something about these old houses, I just never get sick of walking by them. A little warm to be snowing here. Now today's attraction, as they always seem to block off the main street on these semi-holidays. They got a rock climbing wall over here. Karen's gonna try the rock climbing wall. Downtown Rutherford. Always a thrill. The first time we've had a rock climbing wall in Rutherford. Very cool. Downtown Rutherford. I thought you kids were getting me one. What's going on here? What's this all about? Well, this is some kind of attraction for the kids. Oh, the kids are climbing up this. Very cool. They had some kind of bouncer ride here. Let us work. See how high it can go. I'm not sure Karen's going to go on that. Who says Wendy always misses the bears? Look at this, right over Rutherford. We live right near the pathway and the runway right to Teterboro Airport. Uh-oh, Karen found another bounce room. You gonna wait online for this one? Ah, here comes Gerald Champ with his model railroad. Look at this. Check this out.
You want me to hold him?
Oh my God! It's
Midgley knows what this is, the Pinewood Derby.
There you go.
She could not be happy. She would stay right here all day and never leave.
What's this? They're not running the trains today. Who needs this? Go home and run my own trains tonight. Well, now what's he doing? Making a nest up there? Now we get back from our little 1-hour walk here up into town. And I'm looking at, this came from Gerald Champ and it's loaded with nice ideas. Look at these blisters. That's a nice idea. Haven't given that a lot of thought. That's a possibility. Nice shape on the wheel pants, really nice shape. Now he's got plenty of little notes on here. I like the rudder treatment too. Anyway, this is the thing I'm really primarily interested in, is the scoops. And now because I haven't finished up that tip yet, I guess the next thing before I get too involved in these drawings, I ought to get, he's got this measured off for a 14-inch prop. You got it, baby. Doran, get busy making those props. I don't know what's going on with Doran. Anyway, we're going to see what kind of nose section. This is one of our things. We want to come up with something cool. Now, he also sent a copy of this to John Cafaro. John, of course, is going to Corvetteize this. Canopy very similar to the Testarossa. And again, there's our block still sitting there. Every day that goes by, this gets more and more exciting to work on. Anyway, having these drawings now, we can go back and forth, back and forth. He made me 2 copies so I can cut one up and play paper dolls and keep one. He's got the top view up here. Jer, I really got to thank you for this. That is really a nice drawing. Now, as we go to finish this up, maybe we can get this finished up tonight. What I have, if you've been following along with this, if I haven't put you to sleep, what I need to do is set this in place. Make sure that the edge is equal in all the positions, and I'm going to get down in here and scribe out where that hole is going to go. Now since we know we still have it pinned, but we're pretty accurate, this gets me an equal distance. I just have a folded up piece of sandpaper on each side, and a piece of wire that I can carefully find the center on this. And what that's going to mark is now I'll be able to drill that hole for the blind nut, and then we can see if we have an accurate setting on this. But even if we don't, we haven't glued this together yet, so, but getting this is the next step. And when I see people, and Joe Adamusco is the best example I know of, they have a tip weight box that looks like an incline. You know, one big side, and one side you can slide a Super Tiger 60 in through the crack. To me, that's a little quality touch. And most of this, I'm just trying to have my little rivalry with Joe Adamusco and pick up on all the little tricks he's done over the years. That gave us a pretty accurate rendition. Now I need to drill that out. 135, get a 440 blind nut in there. And again, one of the little places we don't want to get some CA in there and lock that blind nut up when we put it in there. Now in the past, sometimes I've had real issues trying to get that blind nut in there, and then I've had to cut the floor out, but this one looks like I got plenty of room to do it. And we'll put a washer on a bolt and just tighten this blind nut up before we even put the hatch in. But a little bit of oil on there. Boy, that's another tip worth its weight in gold. Of course, we're going to be working with CA around this hatch, and if some gets in there, what a nightmare. Now I finally found a use for these long nose pliers. Remember I bought a whole set of like 13 pliers at Costco, and I said, when am I ever going to use these things? Well, here they are. Hello, use me. These really worked out. I'm not sure, you really can't live without them, but and once I get it caught, I can just get my finger in there. Pull this up tight. Get some thick CA in there. Well, hopefully none will get down, although we do have, always like to check with the bolt. Now it looks like some may have gotten in there, I don't know, but even if it does, it's a lot easier now than later. Okay, finally. Okay, now the next step is we need to just put the hatch on here, not the box, just the hatch. Now with that, the hatch in place, we know we've got a good fit around there. We should have a very accurate fit. Now it's a question of taking this piece and just getting it, laying it right in place, making sure we have the fit that we want. And what I think I'll do is just pin this in a couple of spots, make sure I have it exactly how I want it, and then just put a tack here and there. I don't want to glue anywhere near the hatch because I want to take that hatch cover out. Otherwise, if some glue works its way in there, I basically have a no take apart plane. Okay, now we have it tacked. I know that I have all these fits that I think will be pretty good. Actually, if I wanted to, I could take some of this material out of here, not a big deal. In the past, I've taken some out of here too, but I'm not going to make myself crazy. And I'll explain why in a little storyboard, because we basically are taking the weight at a tip, and we're going to weigh, and it's not the perfect way to do it, but it's a reasonable way. We're going to weigh the total outer tip before we install it, and the total inner tip, and deduct the difference. The difference, of course, does not become part of the wing. It becomes part of the wing tip weight. So I'll explain that with a little storyboard before we go any further. But now that I know I don't have a take apart plane, I can pretty much glue seam this up. Now before I join this back to the wing, I want to make sure it's as true as I can get it. Now the fit on this really worked out nicely. And what I want to do is I want to harden up the edge, because as we go through the finishing cycle, these edges are going to start taking a beating. And it's this edge up here that I want to keep nice and crisp. A couple of coats of thin CA, and that edge will be like a razor blade. Well, I had this pinned in place and just tacked, and I'm just going to, before I run this seam, and I want to make sure the tip is still just slightly bigger than the glassed part, and then in this case it is. We could run that seam the whole way now. So I'm going to do a final sand out on this now. And I still need to put that tube in a tip weight box. I need to true this back edge up next. Now the idea is to use the longest sanding block possible to get a nice true edge on the trailing edge. I want to get that little radius in there, and I want to make sure I have the center line right on the center line, and then I'll probably put one more hinge pocket out here, so I have a double hinge pocket out at the tip. It's a cheap insurance thing. I haven't been doing it on the last few planes. It can't hurt anything. When I get the smaller and lighter blocks, I can get this edge blended right in. Now the last thing is going to be to get this edge done with a little sanding block. There's not much to sand, just a little bit. The idea is not to cut through the glass if I can, so I'm trying to stay on the tip and just let the tip of the block go out onto the glassed area. Until I can get that joint to disappear. If there are any gaps, I'll just fill them with CA, and that feels nice already. And it's this joint up here that's the most critical of all, and I want to get a nice blend right around. I don't want to have a spot in here that you can see where the block ends. Most of it I'll do with my bare hand. And when I'm half satisfied that that's going to be close, because we're still doing a hard edge to a soft edge. And 4 or 5 wipes and sands with this, and I'll have hopefully a perfect edge right around the whole front. Not only this, but we're hardening up this edge at the same time as developing this shape. We're hardening this edge so in case somebody hits this with their shoe or something, who knows. When you have to deal with my friends. Sometimes you need a crash helmet. Now this is the little tube that we could put around a bolt head, just big enough that the 440 bolt will go through it. Roughen up the tube, make sure it's around the head of the bolt. I've already put these in, and you can pre-trim this just a little bit. Now I just want to dress this off and put a little radius on here. Now from this point on, anytime we work on these parts, these hatches, we'll sand the flat, break the edge. Sand the flat, break the edge. We don't want to have any edges that are going to be very susceptible to putting a ding in them, or susceptible that when the paint goes on, the dope's not going to stick to the edge. You really want to have a nice little radius on every part from this point on. Now the goal is, when this is done, that I can just rub my hand on here and not feel any inconsistency here. And the way to pretty much guarantee that that's going to happen is every step of the way we'll drop the box back in there, even after it's in silver, and just pick up the high spots. Nice sound, my teeth are hurting. Now the last thing to do here is to get a center line on this, get my extra hinge pocket in here, and that's pretty much going to finish up this. Boy, that's nice. Pretty much have this shape that I was looking for, a little thicker in the back, a smoother taper. Can't feel any of the joints. I think I'll sleep well tonight. Well, now I could start planning out. Well, tomorrow might be a flying day, the way Brian's talking. I'm really excited. That's one down, one to go. I love getting these tips done. That is something that's unique to each plane, and when they're blended in, the feeling is just like it's all one continuous piece. Now the next thing is Midgley is the next step on this molded thing. He's going to put the tips right into the mold, but I think he's going to use the reverse tip, the cardinal tips. But anyway, we'll see. Now, even though we didn't have one big giant chunk of shop time today, we managed to get one of the wingtips done. That's pretty, well, it's almost like free lunch. Now as I'm looking at all the little things that Gerald has put on, and I thought I'd end the night, since we had so much luck with this wing. This wing was just almost like a free day today, all the things going on around here. Looking at his idea for the Rojet, and I'm sure Rich Oliver will like that. That is a nice idea, by the way. And we probably could even use the ones that we have already made up. Well, Joe's got them made up for the Miss Ashley. But again, what we're looking for is ideas here. It's ideas. I'm looking at the bottom. Now Gerald's got the wing adjusted, the bottom in place, the top block laid out, a little more taper. And I guess great minds think alike. I was thinking exactly the same thing, Jer. And I know I made the rudder a quarter of an inch, the rudder. The fuse a little longer than it had to be because I didn't know where that rudder hinge line was going to play out. And he's pretty much got the same idea. Built up half-inch fin. We could really make that, well, we could make it exactly like I was just making videos the other day for George Waters making the A26 rudder. That was the same way. Now I'm just looking at this, and you know, I like to end the night with just looking at, since I have more than one of these, maybe I'll color one of them up. But that sure looks like, it looks like Gerald and I are pretty much on the same page here. And I'm waiting to see, now he's got the thing adjusted, I'm waiting to see, he sent one of these to John Cafaro, and John Cafaro had this idea to do reverse curved scoops that would come to a point If you look at a Lamborghini, it comes right to a point. But anyway, and boy, in every car I look at, scoops, side scoops. Even on a Z06 Vet, they have these little puffed out scoops. And I have to admit, I really do like that picture they used in Model Aviation on the Nats coverage. You really, what's the one focal thing you see? The side scoops. So anyway, we got plenty of things to think about tonight. Tomorrow may or may not be a flying day. Boy, we really paid the price today to get a day freed up tomorrow, and if it isn't, we'll work on a plane. And just knowing this year, Christmas is coming. And there's nothing quite as exciting as the day Karen and I decorate the tree and put up our ornaments, and our neighbors have already beat us to the punch, so a good day. And I think basically a nice job on that wingtip. And Gerald's drawings got me dreaming. So they call me up early in the morning and tell me it's stun heaven. I don't see anybody flying here. I see them all standing around drinking coffee. But he's got the repaired Stuka out here, so let's see what we can give him a hand with.
Seagull with my line yesterday.
You hit one of my seagulls?
One of yours.
Well, wait till Rich Oliver. How did you hurt him? Did you hurt him?
I took him out of the air, and he didn't hurt the plane, so that's what I'm happy about.
So what are we going to name this plane? The Seagull Killer here?
I'd say about 12 foot from the edge of the plane, 12 foot in on the line. So
I bet you any money John had him for, instead of a turkey, had a seagull for Thanksgiving.
I knocked him on the ground, and he took him about, I was 2 more laps before he got his bearings and got the hell out.
Wow, I bet he won't do that again.
Hit him again. You know?
Wow. Maybe he was a terrorist seagull.
He was one of them dirty looking.
Was he wearing a burqa or anything?
He was at 6.
Okay, you got the 76, and what do you need? Just a cone?
I need
what part of the spinner don't you have?
The front part doesn't. I don't have.
Is that a Rich Oliver spinner?
No. This
a Randy spinner?
Randy,
well, you better get that off before Rich Oliver sees
but
it.
The point is, I don't have any other spinner that will.
I got cones.
Brian Ether problem. This is a Brian Ether problem.
Oh,
See, it's got to be.
Get it off and get a Rich Oliver spinner. I got an extra one.
I don't care.
Bring this when you're going to work on the wing, and I'll fit it up because you need a spacer in there and everything.
Are you going to be available then?
Now listen, the cores have to be sanded. You're not going to sand them in the house and say, "Oh, I'll do that right now." You need a pack of cloth.
Yeah, I have that.
You need the tips carved. Oh, we can't line up the lead outs. Okay. You need 2 sheets of 1/8-inch light ply to make up the ribs with the gear and all the gear stuff.
No problem.
So he swears on a Bible he's going to have that ready to go because I'm going to clear the deck. Now listen, Matt Newman called me.
Okay.
And he wants a copy of this video. I think he's building something special too. I think maybe you inspired him.
Yeah, well,
are we going to be ready to go 1 o'clock tomorrow? Ready?
I'll be there.
Ready. Okay. No, you heard it here on cable TV.
I should be back by that time I go in.
You're gonna well, just come over then.
Yeah.
Hey, the coffee will be on. Don't worry. Hey, you gotta work? Okay. Actually, it's turned out to be a pretty good day, but the truth is we don't have long to go. Karen has plans within plans, Christmas trees, decorations. We got to shampoo carpeting, do windows. Christmas is coming. But it'll always be better to start a day with a couple of 90 flights. And I think tomorrow we'll get started on making the custom parts for Rich's wing. So as we leave this day, Rich is committed. Oh, there's that seagull again. You're gonna get hit! Brian hits a seagull. Tomorrow is S Day, Stuka Day. Now let's just hope Rich doesn't run into a problem, or you never can tell. It's that time of year when you sneak in a day.
Jack Frost nipping at your nose.
I was working with some of the concept sketches that Gerald Champ had sent me just to get some ideas, because remember Ferraris come yellow and red, and what I'm looking for, and it could possibly be, I'm going to ask John Cafaro for a a whole list of all the Ferrari models, the names. May be able to pick up some slick name. I had thought of Enzo as one of the possibilities, but I just get a feeling there's probably some other cool name, and since we're not making a particular Ferrari, not like the Testarossa, and I like Gerald's idea of getting some kind of blisters up on the nose, some kind of mean looking thing with exhaust pipes. This is what really gets me going, is when I spend some time like this. No real purpose, just sitting here and dreaming and thinking about the possibilities of, well, we're not discounting anything. This plane is evolving and we're taking it one step at a time. I want to thank Jer again for these drawings. I know John Cafaro has one. And I just really like doing this as kind of a team project. That's kind of cool. I really do like that. And it's evolving. In fact, that top block is almost ready to go. It's been ready. We've bent it the other way. We got to start thinking about carving up the top block. We still got a tip to go. But it's always good to just ideas. Especially concept ideas. So as everybody knows, our daughter is a professional musician, and what we're making her for one of her Christmas presents, we found this old sheet music, and we're framing it. In fact, we got some of them framed already.
Turn of the century.
What are these? Turn of the century?
1898 to 1907.
But they used to sell, like, this is really piano music or something, right?
He plays the piano, so.
And we're framing them up, and of course everybody knows Karen's crafty beyond words. And the other thing is we're doing a custom lampshade. Look at this. A tune pipe lampshade. You know, I could make a tune pipe quicker than you can make this lampshade.
We're trimming this old lampshade.
Trim a tree. Crafty. I have to say something. Even Buzz Brodak would be impressed with this craftiness. Now, one of the things we wanted to do, and we were waiting for our good friend Bill Rutherford to basically return the belly pan mold. Well, we got it back. It's going to John Cafaro next for his P51. Bill, you're okay, but the return policy here is not what I thought it would be. Anyway, we forgive you this time, Bill, but next time you'll be punished. You'll have to clean Rich Oliver's shop with a toothbrush. You know, last night our friend Arnie Haber came over to run trains, and I had forgotten. We had such a lot of fun. I forgot to shut the lights off, so I come up here. And here, well, embarrassing. I holler at Karen for leaving the lights on, and here I am with the lights on. Anyway, we're going to pack up John's mold. Send it out to John Cafaro. He's been helping us. He's going to be sending us some sketches. And Arnie, Christmas is coming, so basically feel free to come. And then see what happens is around this time of year, Mike, Estella, Arnie, all of the guys, they just get the bug to run trains, and I'm the only one that has a, well, Arnie has his own layout too, but we do enjoy getting together, and we really have had a good time. Hey, John, my apologies. I needed to get this didn't fit in any of the boxes. Look at this, how nice this fits in here. It's almost like Priority Mail knew we were going to make it. But just looking at this mold, I know Bill has made some parts from it, and among other people, and I guess it's still in good enough shape. I hope to see some pictures of what you concoct with this. I'm not sure what you're, if you're familiar, but you've certainly got enough videos, and you've certainly been a big help with our Testarossa program. We're only glad we can return this little favor. And once we wanted to clean this all up because Rich Jacobone's coming over to work on his wing, and I had a couple other little things to do before he gets here. Now, because Bill Rutherford has held this mold longer than his authorized time and held up John Cafaro's P51 project, Bill has graciously decided to, at the Nats, take us all out to pizza on his credit card. Thank you, Bill Rutherford. Anyway, we will get this out today, and we want to get ready for Rich's. We're going to start this Stuka wing today, but I want to make a little storyboard of what we're trying to do here. Now let me just back up just a little bit. We're finished with one of our wing tips, and this would be any stunt ship. Now we know, for instance, because we've weighed it, that the tip that we have finished, the outer tip, is 28 grams. Basically, it's an ounce. Now what's going to happen is, when we start the inner tip, and we'll probably start that in the next few days, this inner tip now is hopefully going to be lighter. And let's just make a pretend thing up that it comes out 14 grams, which is not unrealistic. Well, what we have, and I wanted to just make a quick note of this because a lot of people really don't understand this, and I have to admit it's been embarrassing even in my own trying to figure this out. What happens is you can build a wing, you can finish the wing all the way up through the finish, up through silver, and constantly put it up on 2 razor blades right at the middle. And in our case, we have a very clear joint where the middle is. And then put a gram scale under the heavier tip, and you can get a weight. And the weight will be like a seesaw. It'll be the difference in the 2 tips. Well, I just found this is not as accurate. Maybe it's off by a gram or 2, but it's a lot easier than doing that constantly. Is I weigh this tip up, and then when this tip is done, and we didn't even start this one yet. In fact, if we don't hollow these blocks out, what's going to happen? It'll be the same weight. But anyway, it's all beside the point. What you have is a variance, and what it means is, in this case, that we've built into the wing a 1/2 ounce of tip weight. So every time we weigh this wing, and let's say as the wing goes from just being where it is now to where it's tissued, then silk spanned, and then part of it is in silver, and then we add flaps and everything. What we want to do is always take into account, so in other words, if the wing at some point weighs 15 ounces, we know the real weight is 14.5, because we're accounting for, or we've already pre-built in, a 1/2 ounce of the tip weight. And this is critical because, like we know with the Testarossa wing in silver with the saddle, it was a little over 19 ounces. Well, but we knew we had this variation in there. Now, you're never going to fly the plane without any tip weight. You may fly without nose weight and without tail weight, but you're never going to fly without tip weight unless you fly without lines. So, knowing that we've built this in, now I don't have to make myself crazy. And here's what happens, like when Midgley will call and say, oh, or Rich Oliver, my wing is a 1/2 ounce lighter than yours. But I may already have a 1/2 ounce of tip weight in there by not hollowing out that tip. Now in the past, what I've done is really made myself crazy hollowing this all out, so that in the end I could have that silver wing that was 16 ounces or some lighter weight. And as soon as you go to fly the plane, or hopefully before you fly it, you wind up putting a tip weight in anyway. So I think doing this seesaw thing, once I get the inner tip done, I'll make a variation. I'll make what the aggregate is here. And then I won't have to constantly be going back to my little jig with the razor blades and weighing a wing. This way, a little cruder, but it's accurate enough for what we're doing. And these composite wings are coming out plenty light. Light is not an issue. I don't think it's going to be anywhere in the construction of the plane. In the last, especially these things that have composite fuselages and stuff, they all seem to weigh in the mid-60s, no matter what you do. Low to mid-60s. And we're looking forward to seeing how a 90 is going to perform in a mid-60 ounce plane. And so the first thing we need to do, and this is Rich's Stuka wing. Les has this all laid out. And I'm trying to do this in my mind, but here's what we're trying to accomplish. Les has made a drawing, and let's just work off, let's pretend this is the drawing. What we need to do is locate the bell crank off center, and the lead out, and there won't be any lead out guide on this plane, like the A26, it'll just have the lead out, so like that. Was the A26? I'm lost in which plane didn't have an adjustable lead out, and it didn't matter anyway. One of the planes with dihedral anyway. But I want the lead outs not to rub at that high point. See, what's going to happen, we're going to have to lay this all out in full scale. And this is the reason I wanted to have Rich and maybe even a third helper here so that we could get, first off, we have to get these joints done. He's already got the tip carved, he said. And what we have to do is see how low we can get the bell crank here. So we can get these angles, because Les has laid this all out, and it was an incredibly complex thing to get this laid out. But when I connect the lead outs, I don't want to have, first of all, I don't want to have it rubbing on up there. I don't want to have it rubbing on the front of the gear block, because where we're going to put these gear blocks is going to be way up in front. We're going to have to account for these plug-in landing gear that he's got. So laying all this out ahead of time, I have really been losing sleep over trying to figure out, like I call it building it in my mind, but I think we're ready. I think when he actually does get here, we're going to start on it, and the first step is going to be to lay out some of these angles, and we need to have these accurate as possible. Now the way we've done it in the past, let me just show this. Now if we start with a flat table, and this is going to be the trick because we have to take all the dimensions off Les's drawing, we're going to actually put the core, let me just kind of space this, and this is going to be the dimension. We're going to have to make a shim, and then what we're going to have to do is come by with our 90-degree sanding block, that accurate block, and get these edges. Of course, put that shim has to go in a little bit. Because here's the one thing you can't do. If you've ever sliced up a piece of bologna, go take a piece of bologna and slice it. What happens is, if you try to join this wing, and let's just say you put all of the angle in one piece, and then you go to put dihedral joints, this surface gets bigger than this surface. So what you need to do is always work off the table 90 degrees and get on a dihedral wing. These joints have to be exactly 90, and that's why we have that real accurate block. And because when we join them, we need to have both of them exactly the same, or else this wing is going to be, picture how many ways this wing can be wrong. It's staggering. But this way, this way, this way. So we're going to really set up and get all these cuts. Before we do anything, these cuts are going to be as accurate as possible. This is why I wanted to free up a whole day, get rid of all the other projects, get caught up on the molding so we could spend a whole day shaping these cores and figuring out exactly where that bell crank goes. The other issue is going to be where the landing gear blocks go. We've never used them before, so again, this is going to be an adventure. And then figuring out how to get the lead outs that they're not rubbing on anything. So I didn't want to do this in the middle of a day that, you know, there'd be a thousand other things to do. And right now, the deck is clear. Rich is hopefully going to be here within the next hour or so. And we're going to address this. This is going to be the start, actually the start of Rich's bent wing Stuka. Are you wondering why we don't get more done? By 10 o'clock it was 64 degrees outside, and obviously if we can get a flight at 2 and we're going to get back to the shop by 1, but even just getting a few of these flights in. Plus Rich wanted some time on his engine before we open up the Venturi at 2:15. Oh boy, look at the sun, like Houston. What a day. We have just had the year, I have said it so many times, it's embarrassing. But 1 o'clock we'll be at the shop. He's already got the car loaded. After a great day of flying. Can you imagine this day?
December.
In December, and we're flying.
Yeah.
Anyway, we wanted to make sure. Now, Rich has his fuse sides done, but of course it's a different wing. Now, don't forget the wing is different. Let me see how close it is. Oh, it's a bit longer.
Yeah, this is a bigger wing.
Yeah, so your tail's going to be further out now, don't forget.
Well, yeah, it's going to be...
Yeah, in other words, you're measuring from
measurement
here.
is back here.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Right.
And this is 9 1/8.
Yes.
All right, and you're pretty much, you're not real different than mine.
No.
In terms of the fuse sides. Okay, so we know that's going to be, when I make the gas tanks and stuff, they'll be the same.
Now,
We won't have an issue there.
What do you think of this wood? It's not as...
Is this what you got from?
Yeah, from that guy.
I don't want to squeeze it. Oh, whatever it is, you got to go with it now.
I know.
It's
I know.
we got to go to war with the army we got here, Cheney.
But this is the wood that I got. It's not as light as yours, but it's pretty.
Nah, that's
It's
fine.
decent.
That's good.
You know.
That's not going to be a problem.
All right.
And you know what? When you got heavy wood, sand it a lot.
Oh, that's what I'm going to
Sand it, especially in the back.
The hell out of it.
Now the first step we wanted to do is figure out, we don't have the drawing, but we don't need it to do this step. Assume the bell crank's going to be here. Now how far forward are those? Turn this around. These are the gear things. Oh, the bell crank's going to go this way. No, this is going to be out. I'm just looking where the lead out winds up. You see what I'm saying? The only way we're going to know is I'm going to have to make a pattern here. Let me make a pattern and trace this out. But this is going to be a critical part of the plane. This bell crank's not going to be in the middle. It's going to be down. Now using Rich's core, the original core, we laid out what we thought the rib would look like, moved the gear several times, made the cutout, and I did not take into account that the lead outs at this point in the wing are going to be as high, they're going to actually almost be touching the foam. We want to just drill one of these out. Let's make up a fake, because we got enough wood. Let's make up a template, put the bolts in there and see how strong it is. The bolts maybe, and we could just wrap that with some carbon fiber too. Now because we started this and this is already glassed, and we located this several times to see where it was going to be, what it's going to allow us to do right now, and I hope, well, Rich is cutting out the part. We're going to be able to, in this session anyway, just get the plywood parts cut out and made up, and then bolt them together with 440 bolts and see if we need to reinforce this. See, I'm only wondering how strong this has to be, because the forces on this are going to be, you don't have any torsion this way, these are rigid. You have side torsion, which is fine, but there's nothing front to back. So you'd never have to worry, for instance, if this is in here and the gear is going to go back up and hit the wing, it's only going to bend sideways here. So I don't know, we're going to try to make this as strong as possible anyway. Anyway, these are the little gizmos that Rich got from somebody. Jose Modesto got it for him. And it looks like they intended these to go on with 440 bolts at one time. Yeah, that's not. You're going to have to undersize this so it fits under the skin when you're done. So just cut it like you're doing, and then we'll undersize it. And it looks like that only took a few minutes. That took quite a long time to figure out the shape of that part. It was pretty time consuming. Probably didn't take them this long to figure it out for the real Stuka. But anyway, that does have to fit in, and it has to be and we're going to have to relieve it for the skin. So we're going to have to take a little bit of that foam away, like a little bit of a ditch, and then drop that in. First we'll see, once he gets that done, we'll have a pattern, and he can make up two parts. And we'll keep the original one for the pattern. Very involved, but I'm sure it's going to be very rewarding when he gets all these joints. I had anticipated doing the angles first, but since we don't have the drawing here today, getting this part up, it's going to be a full day job just to get those templates made up, and then we'll move on See if we get them done today. Okay, the next step on this is we want to take from this piece, you want to take away the thickness of the wood. So I want to put a line around the whole thing, and we'll go over to the belt sander. Just take whatever thickness this is, the wood is 1/16. Oh, you got the technique down there, baby. I didn't know I was working with such a highly trained individual. All right. All right, so you figured that out. Then that part, when we take the foam away, is going to drop right in like a dovetail fit, and we'll be able to fill it with a little bit of epoxy and Cavasil. And as soon as you get that, then we'll drill the holes in here, and then this will be your pattern. Now you got the clearance here, except we got to pull the foam out. This leave this little tang on just to hold that. Although in the end, nothing's happening back here. And you've got this. We could pull the foam out. In fact, I could start doing this while you're cutting the ribs out.
But this has got to be taken off a little more, don't you think?
I don't want to take the last little bit till we put the angle in.
Okay.
Because the angle, see, when this is done,
it's gonna be
I don't want to be filling it with epoxy. I'd rather have it big.
Right.
If it's big, when you make the final joint, you could just kerf it down.
You're right, you're right.
But I want you to locate, now these, we started off with the gear here. You've got enough of a piece you can put the gear on. Because once you do this, you figure where you want them.
Can we put it here?
As long as you're not interfering with the lead outs. The lead outs are going to be up here. Here, where'd the belt crank go? Here. Picture where the lead outs are coming through there. Now the choice is, if they're too far back, you're going to break props. If they're too far forward, so you figure where you want them. Because once we make the pattern.
This is good, like this, I would say.
You happy with that?
Yeah, I would think so.
All right, mark the holes. Yeah, mark them and just drill the holes. And then that becomes your pattern, and you can go cut out 2 of these and save this for putting the other wing together. Having that pattern is going to be a big thing. Now, all I can picture is, if you've gotten this piece wrong, if this is wrong and you want to bend this forward or back, you got to make a new piece with that curve in it. And that's going to be a pain in the ass. So I think if you're wrong, a little bit too far forward is better than too far back. Here's the center of gravity of the plane, just roughly. See, when you're that far back, yeah, I think that's too far back. And so everybody that launches the plane is going to break. You're going to be one of these guys, a prop a day club.
How's that? Is it better this way?
Plus, if it's too far back, you can't use a stooge. Because as soon as you release the stooge, I'd move it forward some.
I did just now.
Yeah. The good news is, if you're wrong, we can always make these parts over. But boy, is that going to be a job. You know, and then you throw your wheel pants away too. All right.
Well, so it's more than just the wheel pants. It's
the whole thing.
It's the fairings.
It's the whole deal. And you can't, like the wire, you can bend. So it's the devil. The devil, you know. And once you make a mistake, you're married to the devil. All right. Now we can put those holes in. Let me just set up the drill press. Put the holes in there. And then that is an official pattern. And we could start cutting that foam out. Nah, you know what? I don't even want to cut the foam out of the wing until we get the angles in. Let's just get these. We'll just get the patterns made up today. And I'll think like we got one day in the bank here anyway.
You need a drill.
You know what really paid big time? All the time I spent organizing the shop, getting everything in all these clear plastic containers and everything.
Oh, yeah.
All of these little things.
Yeah, just like my shop.
Just like the bunker.
Just like my bunker.
It's nice to work in luxury. See, now the nice thing about this is now, when you put these two together, you could drill these at the same time. so you don't have one gear. Because if they're
exactly,
if they're
this way and the other.
exactly, it's going to look like a shopping cart with a fat lady sitting in it. Now all you got to do from this point on, trace that out, and we'll cut out 2 more, and that's pretty much all you're going to get done today. And I'll bet earlier in the video, if you remember, I brought Rich a list of what to bring, gave him the list, and he said, I don't need a list. Right, Rich?
Right.
Of course right, Wendy. Of course right, Yenta. Okay, let me see it. All right, so see how, now you don't even have nuts on the bolts, but that's still, remember, this is going to be epoxied in nice and solid. I think that'll be fine.
I think so.
Well, and if it isn't, it's going to be a job retrofitting blocks into this. Boy, is that going to be a job. Now picture, once the angle is on here, the angle's in, then we're going to just carefully take out 1/8 of an inch of foam, set that right in so it's nice and flat, and then we'll be ready to mount the belt crank. So now here's your mission should you decide to accept it. Bring the plans tomorrow or next day or whenever. Don't leave the plans home, chickie.
Kick me in the ass.
All right.
Well, as you said to that guy in Sweden, he's not a bad guy, but he's not too smart.
Yeah. Well, if we were smart, we wouldn't be doing this. I'll tell you that.
All right. So therefore,
we'd be flying real Stukas or something.
This is.
Yeah, that's good. Now,
this is good.
Now just trace it out. You're all set to go.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 more of these.
Yeah. Oh, and keep this so you use this as your pattern, especially if Elliot's going to draw the plans to this plane. He's going to need some templates. All right, just get 2 of them made up. Try to get them accurate. And save that pattern. Now, do you have an extra set of those landing gear too?
No, I'm waiting for Jose to get me another set.
Okay, because well, the problem is, if you go to build this wing again, you got another set of cores. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have the gear. You're
screwed.
You're screwed, right? Got to have inventory. All right, while you're doing that, I'm going to make up the belt crank assembly, whatever parts I can of that. Now this is the other issue, because this belt crank's not going to be mounted on center. The wire has to be asymmetrical, and I need to make up a whole separate unit on this. And that's going to go, just see how low you can go, because we want to get, I ground the heads off the bolts even, and your push rod's right in alignment. Well, this is all we're going to be able to do now. Now, for right now, that's all you're going to do. The next step is to get all the stuff sanded out on that. You know what I'm talking about, right? All right. You got the patterns done now? Where are the patterns? They fit nice?
They're in the box.
Okay, all right. Leave everything in the box for till the next session. For right now, I'd say that's good. That's gonna. I'll think about anything else we got to do here special.
Where do you want me to put this?
Oh, over by the molding bench is okay.
Here, huh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so therefore.
Yeah, that's done.
In order to move.
And the way I can prove this is a Testarossa prop, look, it says right on it, Testarossa. It doesn't say Rich Jacobona.
Yeah,
right, Owa?
Tell you something. I traded you for a different prop.
No.
I gave you a Doran prop.
You got a receipt with my signature on it?
You're getting to be like Brian Ethan.
Oh, don't say that. No. Anything but that.
Prop, you remember?